What's going on, guys? Just figured I'd come out here and video what I've been working on. If you've got a 91 or 92 factory Ford tape deck with the graphic equalizer and you're interested in running RCAs to use any sort of aftermarket amp, here is what I found out. So I do owe most of this credit to a random YouTube comment that I will link to in the description because I cannot remember who posted it and or what video it was on. But there was somebody that shared a pinout of the connector on the back of the equalizer. Sorry for the camera as I flip this thing over. That shared the pinout for the big gray square connector, and that's what differentiates the EQ harness versus the non-EQ harness. So for those who don't know, if you want to add, you know, an EQ to a car that didn't originally come with one, you need the matching amp and the matching harness, and that harness and amp combo go for well over $500 on eBay. Not to mention finding an EQ alone, usually goes for a cool $200 or $300 itself. So this is kind of an easier budget way to do it with, at the same time, even if you spend the same money, I've got this going through a 500 watt amp that, albeit is a budget one off Amazon, but compared to, you know, factory amp that who knows what wattage they put out. But anyways, to the point. So there are a few things that I've already tied together here, and this is usually all pinned inside of the big gray connector that comes off of here. So just kind of running through all this. This 90-degree connector that runs from the head unit to the EQ just has 3 wires. I'll post the exact diagram in the description, but the center wire, black with the white stripe, is a center ground, and then one of these is your left channel, one of these is your right channel. So the head unit only does left and right. So this runs into the EQ, and what comes out of it is this mess that I have here. So what this basically does is splits it into 4 channels. So now you have, again, I don't remember wire colors off the top of my head, but you've got, each one of these is your left front, left rear, front left, front right, right? So 4 channels, and then there's a center audio ground, that's your white wire. And then these 2 that I tied together here is just a power and a ground. So it's interesting that they have a red wire running out of here that's a ground, but that's the ground for what powers on the EQ. And then this is a ground, the black wire is a ground for the illumination and things like that. And then these are your 2 power wires that actually turn the EQ on and where it would receive power from the amp, the signal to turn on. So all I have in the car is, I just tapped into the existing radio harness because there is one connector that you don't end up using with the factory harness, because on a car that doesn't come with the EQ, you have the 290s, the 290-degree plugs that come out of the body harness, or, you know, out of the factory amplifier harness. And since we're not using one of those, we can tap into those wires, because one of them, all it does is just power, illumination, ground, things like that. So we tap into that, and again, I'll get inside the car and share exactly how I did that. So this just goes to a switched key on 12 volt. I ran it to whatever the radio goes to, that way it works in the accessory position. So that's all that is, and then this is a ground. And then you've got your 4 audio channels and a center audio ground. So how to add the RCAs is, these adapters come from Amazon, $7 for a pack of 4. And basically all it is a signal on the ground and an RCA on one side. So all you have to do is, I'm using ring terminals and spade connectors here just so it's, you know, unpluggable. You got a ground and you got a signal wire. So you can mark these however you want. I just did 1 RCA per channel. So that's what my amp does, 4 channels. So I want to run each individual channel to. And when you do it this way, because the way I was originally going to do this is just tie the left and right channels together. But if you run them independently, you still get your balance and your fader that will work on the head unit and EQ, which I'll demo in the car later. So again, very simple, and I'm using all my grounds on the radio chassis, so I'm running the audio ground to where this bolt goes in here, wherever I put that bolt. So you just slide this through this ring terminal and then ground it to the chassis here. This is the bracket where the EQ attaches to the head unit. And then I'm gonna run probably 2 grounds. I haven't decided if I'm gonna ground all of them in the same spot. It's just a lot of ring terminals to be stacking, and since I have this empty hole over here, I'll probably do two of them grounded over here, 2 of them grounded here. And then, yeah, it all just plugs in to that, and that really is it. And then it's just typical amp wiring in the car. I'm still work in progress through this. So, you know, you got to run your big power wire, run your ground wire. I'm going underneath the passenger seat and grounding to the stud. and then just running the RCAs. And all the RCAs have to do is come from here, up and around, down the kick panel, underneath the carpet, to here. So you don't really need a lot of length. So this kit that I have came with, I think it's like 17 feet of RCA, so I'm just kind of leaving this coiled up for now. I might switch to a shorter cable sooner or later, but yeah, it's all pretty basic stuff. And then run all new speaker wire, of course, and just same deal, run that down here. And on my amp, I'm just doing, like I said, 1 channel per speaker. So I still got to run the power wire through the car. I just ran it over the hood just to demo it and make sure that everything works, and I'll show that in the demo clips. But yeah, that is really it. If you don't feel like wiring all this, highly recommend you check out Todd Lane. His website is classictocurrent.net. I will link that in the description, and he's just a great guy in the community. I'm sure if any of you guys watch Castle Customs or really any big Foxbody YouTuber, they've probably mentioned his name at some point, but great guy, does amazing work, does a hell of a lot better of a job than I can do here, but I'm a cheap ass and wanted to try doing it myself. So that is pretty much it, and I'll add the clips of it functioning in the car and any associated diagrams and whatnot in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them. Thanks. All right, and here's one quick look at what it looks like when it's all wired up and together. So I've got both my right audio channels on the right side of the chassis. So they're just grounded there, and I have the center audio ground running to this one. This all is the same component, so it all grounds at the same place. Really, it's just different locations. And then I've got my 2 left channels here, and then I just ran all the signal wires to each of the corresponding RCAs, which again, I'll leave that description. I'll leave that diagram in the description, sorry. And that is pretty much it. Like I said, I'm not calling this clean by any means. I'm just trying to showcase how simple it is in theory. I'm not a wiring guy in the slightest, and there's probably better ways to do this. I know Todd Lane, whenever he does these, he'll actually crack them open and solder these connections directly in. That way you're not doing a bunch of wires hanging off the back. It's a very clean install, so that's the proper way to do it. This is the cheap way to do it. And while I'm in here, before I forget, I mentioned I would show the wiring inside the car. So I got this key on 12 volt from somewhere in the radio harness. I'll put the exact wiring diagram up on the screen. This gray 90 is the only one you need to power the head unit. So there's the black one that I've just tucked back underneath the dash back there. So I've got my key on 12 volt, turns the EQ on, and I also ran my amp remote wire from there. And then I've got a ground wire somewhere here. Yep. And that's all it is. So real simple stuff. All you have to modify in your factory harness is just add a power and a ground. And that's pretty much it. So, all right.